Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville continues to stand for life in the Senate, using his leverage to place a hold on military promotions. The coach's stand is in response to the Pentagon's illegal, lawless, whatever term you want to use, abortion policy. And now many suspect the Biden administration is looking to retaliate. That's right, retaliate, by reversing plans to move the U.S. Space Command's headquarters from Colorado to Alabama. The White House claims neither Senator Tuberville's stand nor Alabama's pro-life policies have affected their approach. But is the most pro-abortion administration in our nation's history letting its politics drive military policy? Well, that's a rhetorical question. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Senator Steve Daines of Montana. He serves on several committees in the Senate, including the Finance Committee and the Banking Committee. He is also the founder of the Senate Pro-Life Caucus and chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. Senator Daines, welcome back to the program. Always great to see you.
Glad to join you, Tony.
Now, we've seen the Biden administration's obsession with abortion. No administration in history has been like this. Would they really allow that to dictate their military strategy and policy?
Well, Tony, I think it's important to remember, the Democrats of old are very different from the Democrats today. They are not the pro-choice party that they advertised for many, many years. They're now really the pro-abortion party. It's a radical ideology. It's part of almost a religion for them as they wake up every morning, worshiping this god of abortion, of certainly the radical gender ideology they're trying to promote, as well as climate change. That really is their trinity, as I think about it.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, Coach Tuberville, I call him Coach, Tony, because when you call somebody senator, your approval rating drops 20 points. When you're coach in Alabama, your view is a lot smarter, a lot more popular. But Coach Tuberville, Senator Tuberville's stance is courageous. It's exactly right. He's not wavering on it, nor should he. With what this administration has done, really through fiat, through making rules and regulations here versus passing something through Congress, basically violates the principles of what's behind the hide. And that is using taxpayer dollars to fund travel and expenses for members of the military to go have an abortion. That's illegal. And Coach Tuberville is doing the right thing. And the retaliation we're seeing as this latest Space Force sighting fight is outrageous. And I think it is retaliation because of Coach Tuberville's stance, his courageous stance protecting life.
Well, based upon the projections of what the military has done in expanding their abortion funding, we would go from, on average, about 20 abortions a year in the military to about 40, to about 4,000. So this clearly is an expansion. And as you said, this was not approved by Congress, and Senator Tuberville has made that point. But that doesn't seem to matter. From this administration, I see some similarities between the rhetoric here on military promotions. He's just put a hold on military promotions, meaning they have to go by one. They can't do them, all by unanimous consent. And they're screaming, crying, whining, saying, "Oh, he's destroying our military." Well, they could change this overnight by simply going back to the approved policy. But we're seeing the same type of rhetoric over the debt ceiling. How the Republicans want to default, all of this. Well, the Republicans have acted. They've actually passed forward a measure that would raise the debt ceiling. So, I mean, they're just disingenuous in what they're telling the American people.
Well, Tony, I take it a step further. I mean, it's not only disingenuous, it's disinformation. They're just not telling the truth. It's like you can't win the fight based on the facts. Start to basically promote false information. That's what's happening on that debt ceiling fight, as well as what Senator Tuberville is trying to do. By the way, Senator Tuberville has said, just give us an up or down vote on the floor of the U.S. Senate. Let's bring this fight to the light of day of the floor of the U.S. Senate in front of the people that sent us here to serve and deliberate about these issues. And what he says, you just give me a vote. Even if we lost the vote, he would consider, removing the holes in these promotions. But the Democrats refuse to even do that, Tony. That shows you how dug in they are, and frankly, how afraid they are of the American people to expose this in the Pentagon. You're a Marine, Tony. You understand Semper Fi and being faithful. Look, the left right now is lying about what Coach Tuberville is trying to do, and they're lying about what's happening right now with this debt ceiling fight.
Extremely important point you just brought up about the Senator Tuberville's just asking for a vote. Chuck Schumer could do that like this. But the same thing is true with the debt ceiling. The House passed a bill. Has he put that forward onto the Senate floor?
No, and he won't. I mean, but that's passed. I mean, last time I checked, Tony, isn't the way it work here? You know, schoolhouse rock. I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill. You know, you pass something in the House, send it over to the Senate, but he won't do it. But what's really been disconcerting is you saw when the House passed that bill, which was a great achievement, leadership of Speaker McCarthy and House Republicans basically unified to get that done. That's not easy to do right now.
Yeah.
And then what did the White House do? They lied about what was contained in that bill. I mean, because when the American people see that the foundation of that bill, this is common sense, you know, clawing back $30 to $60 billion of unspent COVID money, putting work requirements in for able-bodied people to have that in exchange for any kind of a benefit coming from welfare. You know, permitting reform. These are all common sense winning issues. We win on these issues 65-35 on them. That's why the White House doesn't want to have that exposed, because they know we win the argument.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, sticking with the military here for a moment, you recently introduced a bill that would ban the Pentagon. I mean, we talk about their woke policies and their misplaced priorities. You introduced a bill that would keep them from spending taxpayer money on drag queen performances or using taxpayer-funded facilities to host them. What is our military there for? I mean, why in the world are we even having to have these discussions?
Tony, did you think you'd live to see the day when you and I be talking about this, about the fact the military is funding drag queen shows? By the way, this is in front of children. It's in front of children at a military base in Montana that has responsibilities for intercontinental ballistic missiles, which is the most powerful weapon that ever invented by man. These are weapons of mass destruction. These are the weapons that keep the crazy authoritarian dictators, whether in Iran or North Korea or around the world, at bay, because they know we've got this powerful weapon, and a third of those missiles are located in Montana. It was that base where this drag queen show in front of children occurred on military property. And this was a cover-up. We exposed it. And I didn't think I'd live to see the day I've got to present a bill that basically does not allow funding and allow those kind of shows to occur on a military basis, and what adds insult to injury in front of children, Tony. You just can't believe it.
Do you know who's cheering the loudest over those presentations? Trying to choose my words carefully. It's those third world dictators. It's the totalitarian regimes that want to see America go away so that they can have their way with the world.
No, I'll tell you, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin are cheering that on. They want to see that. And to think about, why are the recruiting numbers in the military down so much, Tony? I mean, there's a number of factors. But men and women who enter the military want to be in the strongest, toughest fighting force in the world, which we have been and will continue to be with the right leadership. But the Army numbers were down 25%. I mean, we've got a real serious issue of not getting enough men and women recruited into our military at the moment. Men and women who want to serve in the military see what's going on with this woke nonsense, whether it's these drag queen shows at an Air Force base with children, or the Air Force Academy teaching, cadets now. You can't use terms like mom and dad because those are from conservative traditional families to be sympathetic to families that are non-traditional. I mean, you can't believe it, Tony. No wonder great patriots who want to serve in the military are giving second thought about that, because this ideology coming from the leadership at the Pentagon.
Well, you know this, Senator, that those that disproportionately are represented in the ranks of our military are those who come from conservative backgrounds. Now, I'm not saying all of them, but my personal experience and then even the numbers tell the story. When you look at where recruits come from, they come from places that are very deep in the faith, a lot of the Bible Belt. And so you're trying to bring people from there into an environment that is actually hostile to the very place you brought them from.
No, you're exactly right. It's countercultural to the culture that they've grown up in, the America they love, the traditional values that have made this country great of faith, family, and freedom. And I mean, again, you see the images, these eggshells with kids on an Air Force base. It's just startling that as a U.S. Senator from Montana, I'd have to introduce a bill prohibiting that. I mean, we have no more guardrails around just basic right and wrong in this country. It seems like we just lost our moral compass. And as you said so well, Tony, our enemies are cheering us on. Our adversaries saying this emboldens them is what it does, because it makes us weak on the world stage.
It does. I want to get you to weigh in on something else, Senator. We got about 5 minutes left. I want you to weigh in on the border. Now, some say, well, you represent Montana, but every state, as we talk to law enforcement officers and state officials, every state now is a border state with the surge that's been coming across the border. But the Biden administration wants to take a victory lap because only 4,000 to 5,000 migrants are crossing our border daily. I mean, a few years ago, that would be all the warning signs would be going off.
Yeah, I don't know. That's called desperation. It reminds me of kind of like, remember Baghdad Bob during the Iraq War?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just they're issuing this propaganda out there because they can't deal with reality and the facts. And by the way, as we've looked at the numbers, we're going to dig into those because I think there's also, I mean, you can't spike the ball because we only had 5,000 or 6,000 a day. These are still numbers way off the chart. But I think there's also some baking the numbers as we're starting to dig into who's coming across at some of the ports of entry. But setting that aside for a moment, look, we've had over 5 million crossings. And what's exacerbating our fentanyl and our meth crisis in this country is exactly this mass surge of illegals. It's not that complicated, Tony. People say, well, what's the Republican solution? It's pretty straightforward. Build the wall. Walls work. You spend time during the night with Border Patrol agents. They'll tell you that walls are very effective in helping control the illegals coming across the border, secure it. Number two, you put that remain in Mexico policy back in place. It simply says if you want to declare asylum, you stay in Mexico while it's being adjudicated. Right now, if you want to have a court case assigned to you when you declare asylum, it's between 3 and 10 years in the future is when they assign you to show up in a court. We heard a story here just this week where a person came across the border illegally. They were told to show up in a court here in 2033, Tony. I mean, that's what you call catch and release. It's absurd. And then the third action, of course, is keep Title 42 in place.
Right.
Trump had all three of those issues figured out, and the border was at one of the most secure positions that relates to the number of illegal apprehensions we'd had in years. Biden reversed all three of those. That's why we have this mess. This is pure cause and effect. You hang this right around the necks of the administration.
So, Senator Daines, I want to go back for just a moment so people clearly understand what you said. When someone comes across the border, they're caught and they're given a court date and then they're let go. They're let go in this country. They're not sent back to come for their court date. They're let loose in this country.
That's what they call exactly the catch and release. See, under President Trump, if you declare asylum, say, great, we'll consider that asylum claim, but you'll remain in Mexico until your case is adjudicated. Well, all that is, it stopped the incentive for primarily those down in Central America to come flooding across our borders because they knew they had to stay in Mexico. With the Biden administration's policy, you get to stay in the United States while you wait for that court date. That's what we call catch and release. We catch someone that crossed the border and then release them into our country. And by the way, as we see the number of Chinese, Uzbeks, nations from all over the world, over 100 different countries now have had apprehensions. This is not just a Central American issue. This is now a global issue. You want to get in the United States from around the world, just come into Mexico because the southern border is wide open. And that is a significant problem here for national security.
And those that you mentioned are the ones that are caught. There are those that are not caught. In fact, many of those who are caught become distractions for the Border Patrol from being able to catch those that are bringing the drugs and trafficking people across the border for illicit means.
Tony, it's a zero-sum situation. You have a limited number of Border Patrol agents there. They're overwhelmed. In my state of Montana, we've seen fentanyl seizures up 11,000% since 2019. Now you say, wait a minute, Montana is a northern border state. We border Canada, but we're a northern border state with a southern border crisis.
Wow.
So when it crosses the border, Tony, that fentanyl, that meth, it gets to Montana within 48 hours because the Mexican cartels are operating in places like Montana now.
And we're facilitating that with not securing the border. Senator Daines, we're out of time, but it's always great to have you on the program. Thanks so much for visiting with us today.
Thanks, Tony.